Everyone, this is Julia here. As you know, we're coming here for another episode of The Impact of Mindset. I'm really excited to be joined by Jake Patan today, who's going to talk to us about creating mass efficiency and effectiveness. So how are you, Jake?
Very well. We just spoke about, but I'm 2 days into a 3-day fast, so very relaxed today. Not doing anything.
Yes, definitely been picking up those vibes. Maybe I need to do a fast myself. So tell us a little bit about yourself so people get to know who you are and your ability to be a high performer in your own space.
My position at the moment, I mean, it's so interesting when you get the question about a bit of a background, because there's been so many different lives or periods of my life that tell its own story. And now I've ended up in Byron Bay after being in Sydney for the last 4 years. And I left late June because I was thinking, the situation wasn't really looking great. Got out to my family's place in Taree, was with them for 2 weeks, and then I had some education in Queensland. So for quite a while, I've been doing classes or workshops teaching people how to cut hair. And then I was in Brisbane, crossed the border so that, things could remain open in my life, and was living in a backpackers for 4 weeks. And then we went into lockdown there as well. So all the education that I'd been sort of building and planning just got scrapped. And, that trigger came up in that moment, being so frustrated when lockdown was announced. And then it was just like, okay, here's an opportunity to sit in this discomfort and slow down, just come back to my get so frustrated about. And it's like, okay, what do I need right now? And it's like, maybe stability is going to be important. This place came up in Byron, and I've decided not to build any work in my external world in that physical sense. So now it's really about virtual hair training for anyone rather than just the hair industry. And I was like, why didn't I do this before? And then also emotional tools as well for people that are just feeling a lot at the moment. So both of those are virtual, and I can really build that from wherever I am.
Yeah. And I guess it's that ability to pivot and change when you need to.
Totally. This is something that's been so prominent in my life, is if we get caught up being worried about our circumstances, then we automatically fall into this fear state. And in that position, we can only see the immediate way out. And so, at the time, lockdown announced in Brisbane, it's like, quick, how do I get out? How do I just take off to North Queensland or something? But then when I sat in it and I was like, okay, just breathe, stretch in the sun, come back to my daily practice and meditate. And after that, I was able to go like, okay, perhaps this is more relevant, so that I'm actually in lockdown and I'm speaking from that place. So I'm actually relatable to people, and sharing those emotional tools while I'm experiencing it myself. So yeah, totally being able to adapt to that situation.
Yeah, I love that, because I think sometimes that immediate thing we feel is the right choice, but we're not actually listening to our intuition. And then we realize after we've gone ahead and done it, yeah, that wasn't a great choice for me right now.
Yeah. No. And it comes with consequences too when we're just running.
Yeah, absolutely. I know even from just traveling, not being in business, people tend to think if they travel, then they are able to escape what's happening in their life, but yet it comes with them. And again, if you come back to what you've got to deal with, I suppose.
And I mean, that whole situation is very funny because it's like I got out to Taree, I went to Brisbane. Brisbane went into lockdown. Then as soon as that got out, like opened up, I was like, all right, get to Byron. Got to Byron. The day that I got to Byron, we went into lockdown here. And I was just like, okay, I surrender. I give up. Yeah, it totally follows you.
Yeah, so you tell us a little bit about what was happening, because you mentioned to me previously that you used to do 16-hour days before you got into, I guess, surrendering more and going with the flow. So do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So there was a period, and it's so fascinating when you start to understand psychological and emotional situations that cause you to do certain things in your life. And there was a period where I was seeing someone who was becoming distant to me, and so I decided to fill up all my time so that I wasn't thinking about it. So it was an escape, and I was living in Taree on the weekends with my family, and I'd work there for myself, and I'd do 40 haircuts in a day. It was like a 12-hour day, just smashed. Finishing at 10:30 at night. Then the next morning I'd wake up early, drive to Newcastle and work down there for the week full time, and was going to gym afterwards, was doing people's hair at home afterwards, and sometimes even going to Sydney and working, a half a day on a Thursday, and then getting back to Newcastle and finishing the afternoon at a shop there, finishing Saturday nights in Newcastle, driving back to Taree, get all my sort of admin done on Sunday, washing all the stuff, and then do the same thing. And I thought that was a great way to make money, but I was sick all the time. I was not happy. I was just so consumed and trying to fill myself with everything else.
Yeah.
So, running into that wall so many times just really taught me so much about, like, maybe this isn't the right thing. And, the whole time, I'm getting thoughts about, like, or ideas about things that were really my dreams to pursue, but I wasn't creating time or space for either of it to actually understand what I wanted and what was making me happy.
Yeah. Did you feel like at that point in time, like some of the sort of, I guess, default behaviors or thinking was coming back around security as opposed to like happiness?
Yeah, totally. And I talk about it now with people where we pursue money because we've put a value on money, but we've actually let go of our personal values in the pursuit of this material thing. And that, not to say there's anything wrong with money, but it needs to support your values and who you are as a person. And yeah, absolutely, just chasing the wrong thing, thinking that was the best and most efficient and effective way of doing things, where I had no time for anyone else or myself.
Yeah, it's kind of it's interesting because you build your life out in a sense that you didn't have time for anything else, as I suppose a coping mechanism. But then also, I know, like for me personally, I kind of did that immediate thing last year. I went back into teaching, which was my previous job, and then had a very hard lesson that it was not giving me my time I needed in my business. Wasn't being efficient yet at all whatsoever. I couldn't look after my staff as well to move the business forward enough. And then my health got impacted by it too. But it was like, which way, how do you know which way to pick, what to do? You think you do the right thing at a particular time. And I think that's one of the hard lessons sometimes in business and in high performance, when you're really trying to strive for something, you do to some extent navigate what you think is the right choice at that time.
Totally. And I think that's been my lesson, is what we think is most often not the right way at all. It's really about like just this knowing and going with what's working. Um, and that's come through me slowing down and actually doing much less than I ever was.
Yeah. So how did you create mass efficiency for yourself?
Working out my values to start with, um, the specific things that I thrive off, that's allowed me to practice them in my life so that my life actually supports me as a person. Uh, you know, and this is something down to not compromising my values in the pursuit of money, because you know it's going to sound woo woo, but the universe is going like, oh, okay, like that's how you function, so we'll keep giving you more of that, like keeping you unhappy. But it's like, no, don't entertain it. Um, and come back to yourself and ask yourself, what are your values? Slow down. And I've got to the point where I've noticed in my life that I have, and I'd say I speak on behalf of most people, we have about a 2 to 3 hour window of output and capacity. And once that's burnt, like it's gone. Like anything else that you're doing, like you're not really doing. You're just kind of ticking the box to say like, oh, I've done it, but it's like you put zero effort into it. There was no real intention. It was just about getting it done and getting it off the list. Um, and it's something that I'm dealing with at the moment, is living with 6 people. So there's lots of social stuff happening in the house, and people just coming into my space, and like I'm aware that anytime someone's in my space, it's burning that capacity. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like I've got shit to do, and I need to be assertive with my communication to say to people like, hey, great conversation, take it elsewhere, or or I take myself elsewhere, you
Yeah.
know.
It's interesting because I was reading on LinkedIn that people talking about how leadership doesn't need to be communicated. Like words like trust doesn't need to be communicated if you do well in it. However, it's really hard when you're in a situation of like 6 people or you're leading a team, because people can't just guess where you're at.
Mm,
And sometimes when you say things out loud, it makes it so much easier to realize, am I really tracking well with my values and living out of them each day, as
mm,
opposed to just going through the motions again and ticking boxes like you're saying.
yeah. Well, something that just came up when you were talking about that was like, how authentic am I living according to my values? Where my previous situation, when I was in Sydney, I was charging $200 a haircut, to drive to people's houses and cut their hair. And in my mind at the time, it was like, oh yeah, this is freedom, because I'll do 2 haircuts on a Thursday morning, 3 on a Friday morning, then the rest of the week I've got off. So that looked like freedom. But now I'm looking at that and going like, that wasn't freedom, because I was stuck, and my clients were getting haircuts so regularly and consistently that I'd never had the time or space to go anywhere. I had to just stay home for a couple of days, do what I want during the week, but I could never really just go and disappear.
Yeah.
So, trying to build those fundamentals into a scalable opportunity where I actually am creating freedom. Um, and, now that I can create content, accumulate that content for the next 12 months, and probably use the same stuff for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And I think that's where that efficiency and effectiveness comes together, and collides really well.
Absolutely. Like streamlining everything,
Yeah.
and using that capacity to go like, okay, use this 2 to 3 hour window to create as much as you can, boom, 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 boom. And then as soon as it's done, like as soon as that 3 hours close, it's like, all right, completely switch off. I'll go and sit in the sun, do some stretching, a workout, maybe do some art, something creative, go for a walk, listen to a podcast. But as far as my output, it's over. So wait till the next day.
That is so different from me. It's so different. I find that incredibly interesting because, I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and by the time it gets to like 9 o'clock, I feel like I've done a day. Because essentially I have, compared to what I'm used to. But then I'm like, there's more stuff to do. I'll have a rest and I'll do more.
Totally.
And to me, I think, well, I've had to learn how to rest has been one of my challenges. But to me, I think I would really struggle. Like, before I do a fast, maybe I need to do, can you actually just do 2 days? Because I think for business owners, and maybe you can share what you think about this, but just not working on Saturday and Sunday is really hard to start with.
Yeah, well, it's still that attachment to we have things to do. Of course, I don't think we ever get to a point in our lives where there's nothing to do, and in a way, it's a blessing to have things that we can do. But it's being able to discern what is the moment when you've done enough, and that you want to go and have some time to enjoy as well. Because essentially retirement is now, it's not when you're 80 and you can't enjoy it. But yeah, as far as the Saturday Sunday thing goes, like I have a lot of conversations with salon owners about not opening on Saturdays, and so many people think that that's their busiest day, so they can't close. And it's like, well, that's your busiest day because you're open. If you close, those people are going to come like during, they'll make time. They're going to want their hair done. They want you. Maybe you do a late night Thursday, Friday instead. But if you curate, if you make yourself accessible, people are going to use it. And it's the same as what I did with my haircuts in Sydney. I cut back to 5 people a week and charged $200, and it's like no barber in the country is charging $200. On paper, that would never work, but people were paying it every week, and it's just like, that was the permission for me and other people to just stop telling yourself these limiting stories and actually go ahead and do what you want to do and live the life that you want to live.
Yeah, and I think people come from jobs, go into businesses that they run, and they still kind of carry the structure of wherever they worked or with them. And that's how they get into that trap of not having the freedom which they started their business for. So I love how you say, cut the Saturdays. Like, I've never thought about that. I wonder what would happen if I said to my hairdresser, stop working on Saturday.
Totally. And you put it well. It's like, what are we doing it for? I know so many business owners and parents of kids that spend so much time at work that they don't even see their kids, and it's like, well, what was the point?
Yeah.
Like, do you love that work that much that your kids just kind of like, get some extra funds but never experience their parents?
Yeah.
And that's a sad reality for a lot of people.
And I think that there's a big societal limiting belief that if you have a business, then you don't have a life. And it really needs to shift, because that comes from not being effective about how you're running your business, curated on that lifestyle you're talking about.
Totally. Just really coming back to those values. And, there's still times that I deviate from it. And it's exactly why I'm doing this fast now, is like I was deviating from my values and compromising my boundaries and not communicating to people my needs. So it's like, all right, cut the shit, stop consuming, and really come back and look at what are my values and how do I want to express them, and am I aligned with my message and my values?
Yeah. So in your mind, what's the high performing salon owner? What's their kind of mindset or business approach?
it's going to be different on every individual level. And again, just something that I'm doing now is actually working with salons and barbershops pre-COVID, where we could actually redesign the culture, connection, community in the workplace, and looking at what are the individual values of each worker, so that we're actually creating an environment that supports people on an individual basis. And I think that's such an important thing for effective output as a team. And so, as far as like a salon owner and their high performing mindset, really depends on who they are and what they believe in. But I've met people that still believe, they believe that working as much as they can is great and they love it, and it's just like they think they love it, but I can also see there's so many things in their life that they're missing out on, but maybe subconsciously don't realize.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think that what your definition of success and failure plays a big part into that too.
Mm.
You know, there's been clients I've had who are from other cultures and they don't know anything other than doing 15 to 50 nowadays. To say to them, you know, even people that have been on my team, that the system, I've had to say, you're not working now. They're sending me emails of work they've done at 9:30 at night. And then I get up to them and I say, no, like, sorry, what are you doing? Spend time with your family. And they're like, oh, I didn't mean to upset you. And like, I'm just trying to get you to understand when you work and when you don't work.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's never going to be a separation, and that's when you'll get sick.
Totally. And, you know, if not now, when? And it's something that I've considered for myself. If I'm not enjoying the process, then what is it for? You know, and there's been a period of my life where it come up last year where I wasn't working properly and not working aligned with who I am, and I'd made $7,000 in a week, and that was through haircuts, and it's just like I made 10 times my standard wage as a full-time hairdresser, but I don't feel any different, and I am short on sleep. I didn't get to eat what I wanted to eat. Some nights I wasn't eating dinner because it was so late, and I felt mentally just like I'd put my head through a wall. Didn't get to meditate, didn't get to learn or read or anything that I enjoyed, didn't get to go out and sit in the sun and exercise. So it was funny because people were like, oh, you're making good money. And it's like, well, good is an interesting term when it's not good at all.
Yeah. When do you get to actually enjoy what you earn with your flat tap?
Totally. You know, and we have to be practical and say we might not make it to retirement. And perhaps we get to retirement and something else happens and we don't have the money. Like, was it all worth it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I meet people who will say like, oh, my business is still in a sort of growing phase, so I'm just going to work and do nothing else for the next few years. And I'm like, you don't know what's going to happen in the next few years. Okay.
Yeah.
Life can change in an instant.
Yeah. Yeah, I had this experience last year. I was partnering with someone and we did a collaboration photo shoot for a hair competition. And my whole thing was I hadn't been involved in these competitions because of the way that it creates divide in my idea. And that I really wanted to use the platform to share a message. And it was a controversial thing. We put a woman with short hair into a men's category where they had male models only, because it had to be a men's haircut. The head of the competition called me and said, "Oh, we can't put this in because there's a woman in it." And anyway, I went back to my partner, and they were like, oh, maybe you should just change the image, and you want to share a message, so like get in and speak from that platform. And I'm like, nah, if I'm compromising my values and my integrity, then the message that I would share from that platform has no legs. Like, it just doesn't mean anything. So the other thing was, I'd said in that was, what if I don't, something might happen next week and I don't get to the point of being able to even share the message. So if not now, when?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because sometimes people contact you and say, I'd like you to talk about this particular event in your life on your podcast or on your blog or whatever. You think, oh yeah, but I've got this schedule I've got going. And one of my previous podcasts said that to me, like, share your story about what happened, why you became a coach. And I'm like, nah, I can bench that for a while.
Mm.
And a week later, there was massive protests about the way women get treated. And I was like, man, I didn't want it. I never wanted what I was doing to be topical at all whatsoever, because I felt like that doesn't really send a message either. But I guess just understanding the power of impacting one person as opposed to impacting the masses is important as well, because that is still effective use of your time.
Mm. Yeah, and I think when you can get it right on a level where you're really supporting one person, then naturally, like, the rest of it takes care of itself. But if you're consumed with trying to cater to the masses, then like the message is just going to end up so mixed.
Yeah. It's a very poignant message right now as well, I guess. So what sort of tools or strategies do you provide people with if they come to you and say, hey Jake, I want to improve my efficiency and my effectiveness?
Yeah.
What do you sort of suggest to them?
It really depends where they're at. Firstly, like, we'd have a phone call and we just talk about their situation, and I can sort of gather a few different points that's like flag, 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 about things to work on. And I mean, the last person that I've been working with, we started with a daily practice, going into their limiting beliefs and then creating affirmations to basically dissolve those belief systems. But that's a pretty basic thing to understand. The only things that are stopping us from being efficient are actually the stories we tell ourselves. And here's an example where this guy that I've moved in with, he'd trained to walk or carry a disabled guy on his back to Everest Base Camp. So his level of training is like ridiculous. And he's like, let's do some box jumps. And I was like, yeah, okay. Well, like, in my head, 10. And he's like, right, we're going to do 500 each. And I'm like, what? And the spot that we did it, it's like this big stone slab. And it's quite a high jump. And I'm like, but I'll fall over and smash my face or something. And he's like, good. So, like, when you get to that point, then you can stop. And it's just like, yeah, I understand it, because that's that limiting belief. Like, I was just telling myself a story that, like, no, that's impossible. You can't do that because I'll get hurt. And that we're just in fear of potentially getting hurt, failure, all these things. And it's like, well, do it and find that point. Or prove to yourself that you can go beyond what you thought you ever could.
Yeah, definitely. It must be so cool to be surrounded by people like him. It's be so empowering.
Absolutely. And yeah, this is a funny thing as well, where I no preconceived idea that this was a possibility. Like, we're in this sanctuary essentially, and I was literally in a 2x2 cell in a Brisbane backpackers with no windows, and I'd actually spent I'd put 5 weeks accommodation up front, and my bank account hit zero, so I had no money for food. And so I was literally in this position of having nothing and not eating dinner, just eating like a handful of nuts for lunch. And, you know, in my mind, that's so scarce. And coming back to such a consistent practice of, presence, meditation, exercise, journaling, affirmations, and I was able to let go of that external circumstance. And when I could find or feel abundant with nothing, then the universe showed me abundance.
Yeah. And so how is that, how are things changed for you? Like your living circumstances have changed. How is the virtual side of your business going now?
People, like, I'd say just the universe showed me that was the way to do things, because I started doing this thing organically where I'd just run a Sunday live video for half an hour called Coffee With Me. And people would just jump on and we'd be basically sharing a tea or coffee, and I was just sharing, being vulnerable about my situation, but also at the same time offering a perspective on current events that wasn't for or against, but it was just like both of those things are irrelevant. Let's come back to this unifying outlook, and was offering that. And people just started messaging me like, oh, I love what you're doing. Send me your bank details and I want to support what you're doing. And I was just receiving donations that I've never received ever in my life. Also had to sell some assets and afford my next rent. But that was also part of the process of just understanding that I was attached to those things, and it was just like, I can let go of it and I can utilize that. And money is just this currency that we need to understand that it flows when you open the funnel for it to flow.
Yeah. And so has I'm trying to think right now. I got off on a tangent. So with your virtual work, with your coffees on days and things like that, are you constantly tapping back into those values yourself again and feeling like it helps renew that efficiency and effectiveness for yourself?
Totally. Like, I think it was probably 3 weeks ago where I officially put this subscription package together where people can access an Instagram page. So it's a private Instagram page. You go to the link, you subscribe. Right now it's very cheap in my mind. It's $22 for a whole year, and you get access to all these emotional tools and support and snippets from all the past lives that we've been accumulating over the past few weeks, to help just feel not alone in your own journey. But yeah, put that together about 3 weeks ago, and then I was just like bang, 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 like all this content. Just, it was very clear to me what I needed to put out and how to do it. And then all of a sudden, I just started like not meditating, being around people for too long, and not expressing myself, and just falling back into this like trapped mindset of noise that I haven't been able to put anything out.
Yeah.
And it's like, shit, this is exactly why I'm doing this fast now, to go like, okay, step away from all of that, take yourself out, sit in some space, start yoga, meditation, just drink water, no bad food, obviously. And already today being the second day, it's just like, oh, yeah, this is it. Guess a lot of my message is about doing less than we think.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a fine balance between having community and having time on your own, isn't it?
absolutely. And yeah, I think there's very few people that understand it. Like we're just constantly feeling this pressure. I felt that pressure for so many years of like I have to be social and we have to connect with people and everything else. But in the last few months, just really coming to experience and understand the power of compounded stillness.
Yeah.
And when you're not filling your mind with stuff, and you can actually just start listening to yourself and that intuitive guidance to go like, oh, it's so simple.
Yeah. It's I think it's so important, like this year in particular, for me, it's felt like it's just social media has just exploded on all these opinions and everyone's thoughts about everything from vaccinations to whether we're going to travel again, to borders and what politicians have done what, and everything
Mm,
else. And I even feel like, I was thinking this today again as I was out for a coffee, I was like, I don't even want my phone to do a check-in.
yep.
Like, I respect and I value the fact that we need to check in so people know where people are for health reasons, but I don't want my phone with me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this means that instead of me going for a coffee, I really need to just walk more or go places where I don't need to check in because I'm in open space, and enjoy that more because it feels heavy even though I'm not opening it. Like it's just sitting there.
So
Um,
heavy.
and and I think this year for me anyway, I've cried more than I have any other year
Mm,
because I've had more like chill moments. And um, you might be able to tell me from the people that are in your coffee chats or whatnot, or your own personal experience. But I think when you find a different gear of efficiency and effectiveness, you break through another level of those limiting beliefs, and there's kind of more shedding of that growth that you've gone through and where you've been before. Um, and that's why those emotions will come out.
mm. Yeah, and one thing is willingness to be vulnerable with your emotions. Um, I think if you have the tools to bring yourself back to a centered place, um, and through practice, like I've been to half a dozen retreats that it's this constant practice of essentially telling your story to strangers and crying in front of strangers, and that becomes normal, and it's just like, oh, this is a nice thing. And I feel like now I'm so fine with doing that on camera in front of people that I'm okay with how people perceive it, because that's not me or my responsibility. But what it does there is allows people to feel seen in their own emotions,
Yeah.
um, because we've been told or led to believe that emotions are a bad thing, and don't cry and don't be emotional, don't be upset. And it's just like, no, do it. And
Yeah.
show people that you can do that and still be resilient.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine that it's, well, far more important to share that with men that join like your coffee chats as well.
Mm. Yeah, especially being a barber for the last 12 years, it was like, the thing that really set me on this journey was 2 years ago at the first retreat that I went to, was just breaking down my own journey and understanding, or creating understanding, perspective and awareness, forgiveness and acceptance of um, good and bad things in relationships. And I was like, wow, like this would be so healing to share with other men. It's like, oh, I've got this position as a barber to talk to people. And when I've started using that much more intentionally, that people are opening up about things that they've never even told their partners or their families or anything. And they're telling their barber, and I was just like, wow, like now this needs to be part of the education that I'm offering to other hairdressers and barbers. There's the responsibility we have as essentially psychologists in a way, to
Yeah.
just hear people. And offer space to really listen intentionally. But that also comes back down to our own individual responsibility to make sure we create space for ourselves so that we're giving that to other people first.
Yeah, definitely. I love so much of what you just said then, because I know how many times I've been to get my hair done and I'm like, blah, this is everything that's going on. And they're like, oh, right, he clearly hasn't told anyone that today. Well, yeah, sorry you've copped that.
Yeah.
But
But
it's someone from a completely different background from you, and it's not judgmental, and it's so good. Like you said, it's just like talking to a psychologist or coach.
and I think the beauty of it is that, like, I've been to a psychologist before, and you just get this really textbook answer. It's like, oh, you said this, so I need to answer like that. I wasn't allowed to know their real name. You're not allowed to speak to them outside of that room. And it's just like this superficial thing. Whereas when you speak to your barber or hairdresser, it's authentic, and it's just like there's no expectation. And this is just a real person having a human to human contact and connection, interaction. And that's something that we can all really benefit from.
Yeah, definitely. I know even when I've had to call like helplines because I wanted to chat to someone different, you end up getting every sentence repeated back, and you feel like a monkey. And like, I know what's going on in my head. I don't want you to say the same thing back to me. So yeah, I absolutely get that. The other part I loved about what you said too was that we have to actually have space so that we can actually deliver that help and that service to other people. Because I think so many people wonder, why is that person not able to give me the time of day? But then when we actually think about how much space is in their life, do they actually rest? Do they actually take time for themselves? Then it makes all sense. Like, they don't even make time for themselves. That it's not possible for them to make time for me, even if I want them to.
And here's like the biggest clue to what's going on at the moment is like understanding, like, I don't take information anymore from people who I don't see as being clear, because I've got people sending me videos every day of like, oh, this person said this person said that, but as soon as you see the video, you can already, like, there'll be a caption and someone will be like, what the hell is going on? And like automatically to me, that's just like, oh, this person is just going through their own emotions, so they're actually only just projecting more shit that's not actually helpful to anyone. So I really come back to this place of just recognizing real leaders who are clear, and sharing information back and forth between those people has been so much more productive. And as far as I can see, the people that are in chosen or self-designated positions of leadership aren't projecting evidence to suggest that they are clear at all.
Yeah.
Because if they were, it'd be a totally different circumstance, and we'd actually be able to move forward with all of this together.
Yeah. Because it's part of increasing our awareness about ourselves when we're becoming more effective in what we do and how we want to live our life is understanding the humanity in other people as well, which brings far more social connectedness than like the judgment or how people need to be thinking, what they need to be doing.
That's it. And that's exactly it. Like, because people have said, what's going on with the agenda, and it's just like, well, I don't want to believe that another human has an agenda to be malicious or deceit to community. So can we see that they think they're trying their best right now, and from that fear state, they're looking at the most immediate way to get out of this. But as we spoke about, it comes with that consequence that we don't get out of it because it keeps following us.
Yeah.
until we see that bigger picture. And that comes through just stepping back, slowing down, coming back to our values, listening, and creating space.
Yeah. So is there a number one thing that you would say if someone finds themselves reacting as opposed to responding or thinking when a situation comes up?
Yeah, cat, and I'll just speak vulnerably through that, was like that moment that I saw the sign saying that lockdown was in Brisbane, and I was just like, no, I thought I was free, and it was just like so much anger. And I was like, all right, catch that thought, catch that feeling, go and sit, like put my phone and everything away, just sit. Did some stretching, just some like really long stretching in the sun, and just breathed deeply and as long as I could. And there's this quote that I've just come back to that was, every time I experience stress, I breathe deeper. Every time I experience stress, I breathe deeper. And I was like, sat there for half an hour. And it's just like, now I'm excited. It's like, yes, let's go into lockdown and, actually be able to speak from this place. What does the universe have in store for me now? Like, what is this experience about?
Yeah. And so what do you think is ahead for you?
Is ahead?
Yeah.
That's such a hard thing because everything's evolving so rapidly, and these ideas with my virtual things, essentially they're the evolution of previous seeds that I've planted, didn't work, planted, didn't work, planted, didn't work, but now it's like it's actually coming into something more tangible, that it's working better. But I don't want to say that that's the thing either. It might be completely different to what actually works. What's ahead for me is just to keep practicing, understanding myself and creating space and doing and then stopping. Sitting in the sun, breathing, meditating, eating clean, drinking lots of water. Like that's 100% my priority. Everything else comes as an expression of that.
Yeah. And are there any sort of final takeaways for people who are wanting to create mass efficiency and effectiveness?
Call me. But look, like, if anyone can take anything away, is just do less, create more space, ask yourself what is enough.
Yeah.
And that's got to be an everyday question.
Yeah. I like that. There's got to be a point where you stop. Yeah, it's a really good question. What is enough? Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining for this chat. It's been really lovely. Your calmness has definitely rubbed off on me.
Good.
Thank you for that. And I hope the rest of your fast goes really well.
Thank you. Thanks for taking up some time too. It's like I need to do something now, and just really good time to make use of mental clarity as well. So thank you for the questions and for getting the message out there.
No problems at all. We're going to be sharing links for you for your socials, your website, in the show notes, and on my Facebook page. So people can get in contact with you as well. And of course, for those listening, that's not just people who are barbers or own salons, but anyone who wants to create efficiency and effectiveness in their life or business. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And I'll connect with you again sometime soon.
And look forward to it.
Cool. Thanks, Jake.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.